New documentary focuses on the health crisis faced by millions of women going through menopause. It's called The M Factor, and it's sparking important conversations about menopause, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. Joining me now with more are Christina Dave. She's the podcast host and lifestyle expert. Welcome. Great to have you back.
So good to be here.
Yes, and we're so excited because we're also joined by Jo LaMarca Mathisen. She is the co-executive producer, I should say, of the M Factor film. Welcome, Jo. We're so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yes. All right. So, Christina, let's talk a little bit about your connection with Jo. The two of you met several years ago, right?
Yeah. So Jo was the executive producer of the fourth hour of the Today Show and actually connected me with Hoda Kotb. So I interviewed her for Virginia Tech. And I knew when I launched the podcast, I wanted her to be my very first guest.
Okay.
So we started then, and she was just the M Factor film. I don't even think it was named yet, Jo. We could talk about that. But I knew now, doing this with you, that I wanted her to be our first guest here, because this topic is so important.
It's so important, and it's now exploding. But Jo, take me back, because we were talking several years ago. People were not talking about menopause, wouldn't discuss it, and you said you were having maybe difficulties finding funding for this film, right?
I was having difficulties finding help for myself. and so that's kind of what sparked this. Tamsin Fidel and I, Tamsin is one of our producers as well. And she and I were both in the process. We were going through menopause or perimenopause. We didn't know what was wrong with us. And a mutual friend introduced us, and we realized that if we didn't know what was going on with us, that we couldn't be alone, and that were probably many, many women who didn't know what was going on with them and their minds and their bodies. And so we decided, let's do something. We both worked in television, and we knew how to tell a story. So we said, let's tell the story of menopause. And we started shooting it with our phones, and we thought we would just slap it up on social media, and hopefully that we tell 10 friends and they tell 10 friends, and it would just grow. But it did grow bigger than that.
I was just going to say, it grew a lot bigger than that. And, just within the last year, I've noticed, and maybe it's because I'm paying attention because I'm going through it too, a lot of us are going, what is happening? There's so many different signs and symptoms of menopause, and you really do feel like you're going crazy. And so I'm glad that you're doing this and tackling this issue. But within the last year, it feels like there's more conversations. We're seeing A-list actresses come before Congress even, and talking about it, and really advocating for women's health and studies into menopause. So what do you hope comes from this documentary?
Well, awareness, number one. And you're right, it helps that so many celebrities are stepping up and talking about it, because I think as women, we associate menopause with getting old and drying up and being useless, right? And that's how it's been portrayed in the media for the longest time. But when you see these stunning, beautiful, smart women talk about it, it makes it almost trendy that it's okay to talk about menopause now. It's not, in fact, it's better than okay. It's on trend to talk about menopause. But when we started this 3 years ago, there weren't a lot of people talking about it. Over the 3 years, more telemed platforms started to surface, like MIDI and Alloy, and then medications started popping up, like Veoza. And there was that Super Bowl commercial that, a couple of years ago, and that brought menopause to the forefront. So we're hoping that the more we talk about it and the more women talk about it, the better off we all will be, so that we know what doctors to see, and we know what questions to ask, and we know what our options are. And most of all, that we know it's not just us. We're not going crazy. It's what's happening to our bodies. And it's just like when we go through puberty or when we're pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a big takeaway when I watched, part of it, and I going to finish it. But there was an interview where this woman said, We celebrate going through puberty. We celebrate pregnancy with, gender reveal parties, and we have big parties and we talk about, babies. But when it comes to menopause, it's silence. Nobody talks about it. So I love that this is a conversation that we're having. Take me into this documentary, Jo. Tell me a little bit about what people can expect. There's a lot of interviews with a lot of women who are going through it, but also some interviews with the experts and what they're saying now, right?
Well, I think, a big thing is women are afraid of hormone therapy. And that is the result of the WHI study that came out in 2002, saying that hormone therapy caused breast cancer and strokes. And that study was later debunked 15 years later, but it made headlines when that study was pulled in 2002. And when it was debunked, it was in a whisper. And so women remained fearful of taking hormones. I think there was something like 18 million women on hormones in 2002. And when that study came out, 16 million flushed those hormones down the toilet. So these doctors talk a little bit about the study. They pull it apart. They look at the data differently. The data was also looked at in the spring. It was reevaluated. And so they clear up some of the confusion around hormone therapy and who can take it, who can't, and what it is actually. So we hope that women don't fear hormone therapy, and that they feel open enough to talk to their doctors about it. I mean, we interviewed one woman. She's not in the film, but we interviewed her, and she said, "Oh, I won't tell anyone I'm on hormone therapy because I don't want to be judged." And I thought that was really telling of where we are. So, we're hoping that this film just gives women the knowledge and the education that they need to feel better and to get better.
I love that. Yeah. And how can people help move the needle when it comes to this conversation, with this film?
Well, some of the things that we hope to do is to create workplace policy. And I think when I was the EP of the fourth hour of today, I was going through menopause. I couldn't remember things. I was having hot flashes. I had total insomnia, and it's hard to work on a morning show when you're not sleeping at all at night. and then you have to get up. You don't even have to get up. You just go. And so I couldn't give the show what it needed. And a lot of women drop out of work in their 50s because they can't function through their menopause symptoms. So we're hoping that women will speak up and that they will create that conversation in their workplaces, or they'll at least let us help them. And we're hoping that, that legislation changes around menopause. We held the first Senate briefing. We were invited by Patty Murray, Senator Patty Murray of Washington State, earlier this, we're in December, so it was in November. It was the first time that menopause was discussed on Capitol Hill, the first time. And so we want to change that. We want to make it acceptable, more than acceptable. We want to make it, a world in which this is just another stage, but we have so much more to give, and we're not ready to give up. So you can move the needle by writing to your local representatives, by creating workplace policy. And those are the places that we really have to start.
I love it.
Yeah. I was going to say quickly, let's talk about just real quick, how many women, we were just talking about this before we went on the air, how many women are going through menopause right now?
It's 6,000 women a day in the U.S., but by 2025, which is just around the corner, 1.1 billion women, over 1.1 billion women will be in menopause. And that's not just, we've learned that menopause is one day, right? It's the 1 year anniversary of your last menstrual cycle. And so you're in perimenopause for a very long time. And then you're menopause for a day, and then you're postmenopausal. But as we learn in the film, menopause never ends.
It doesn't end, right? Exactly. And we've got to get some help for these ladies, for these millions of ladies. Jo, thank you again for your time and for all the work that you put into this film. It's called The M Factor, and you can find it on PBS. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks, Jo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.